Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are across the known world. And welcome back to A Crown Between Two Roses. And tonight we are interviewing the Crown of Drachenwald. I'm Countess Beatrix.
And I'm Countess Lilya bint Æiríkr. Before all interviews, we acknowledge the first landholders of our kingdom. So if you wouldn't mind, good nobles, we come here together in the spirit of fellowship, deepening of our skills, sharing of our knowledge, and a shared interest in the search for truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Countess Lilya bint Æiríkr, on behalf of my kingdom, would like to acknowledge the traditional holders of the land upon which we gather. We recognize their continuing connection to land and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and the elders of other communities who may join us here today. Thank you, Your Majesties.
Thank you.
So the initial question that we ask all crowns is that, do you know where your device and the name of your kingdom came from?
Do you want to start?
Yes, we've been looking into it, and as we've been playing this for a while, the name is German, and Drachenwald means dragon forest in German, and it comes from that the SCA started in Europe, in Germany, from people coming from the States, military coming from the States into military bases in Germany, and started spreading the SA from there. And that's basically how it went. And the device is a black dragon. Of course, if you have the dragon forest, of course you should have a black dragon. And there's also a lot of myths and legends about dragons in that part of the kingdom. And it's a very mythological creature in Europe.
And the colors are a tribute to it starting in Germany. So these are the colors of the German flag. This is what we've come to learn. And we're very proud of our black dragon. Yes.
And as a side note, black dragons are protected creatures in Drachenwald.
Aha. So Drachenwald has principalities as well as baronies, doesn't it? It's not solely a kingdom and then the lower ranks as well. And I believe you were a prince and princess, is that correct? Is from one of the principalities?
Yep.
So is it very different being the prince and princess of a principality to the king and queen of what the rest of the known world kind of goes, Europe?
I would say I'm very grateful that we sat as prince and princess of the Principality of Nordmark before we won a crown tourney, because it is a very good way to learn how to be a royal. It took me half the reign. So in Nordmark, in our principalities here, on the day of the tournament, you are crowned and you hold your first court. So it's a bit of a shock. There's no preparation. You need to be prepared to take over the role if you're in the tournament. And it took me about half the reign before I realized, when they said Your Highness, that they weren't talking to somebody over my shoulder. It was a very, very good experience. I would say the difference between principality and kingdom level is exponential. There are many more layers, and then you need to know the whole of the kingdom, which in our case is 18 mundane countries. So it is quite large, from Iceland to South Africa to Russia.
I was going to ask you about how different it would be reigning over so many mundane countries. For Lockhart, we have two countries here, and some of the kingdoms across the United States and Canada, they merge across both kingdoms. But to have 18 countries, that would be insane. How many of those countries actively have the SCA a part of it?
The majority.
Majority, about at least 2/3 of them.
Wow. And is it expected that you travel there?
It's welcomed.
It's welcomed. It's not expected, because if reigning 6 months would mean you'd need to visit a lot of country every month, and that's not just doable. But it's highly recommended to at least visit every region.
If you can.
If you can.
I mean, we have no requirements that you must travel to other parts of the kingdom than where you live. The requirements are, of course, attend your coronation, have your tournament for your heirs, and then attend the coronation for the heirs. That is the bare minimum. Anything beyond that is bonus, and people are very happy to see you.
And I do have to ask, how is the language barrier?
For my part, I think it's very good to be aware of the different languages, and know that when you're communicating with someone, it's usually not their first language. It's their second, third, or even fourth language in some cases. So it's educational to know about it, and the common language is English, because most people speak it, and the official documents are in English. But we need to help out. We need to, if someone is more knowledgeable in English, they help translate, and we have people translating during courts and things like that. So it's quite impressive to hear a herald speaking perfect English, then switching to another language, and then switching to a third language. It has happened, and that is, you can just be amazed by it.
Yeah.
And then beyond not the just having English as your second, third, or fourth language, underlying all of that is the culture that you are from, where you grew up, or how you're used to communicating. So if you, for example, are in a culture where it is the norm that you say things directly, you do not tiptoe around the subject, then somebody who is from a different culture, where you slowly bring up a subject, talk around it a while until you finally get to your point, they may not like each other, or they may be misunderstandings, is what I'm trying to say.
Culture clashes.
Culture clashes, yes.
Yep.
I can add that when you may hear from my accent, I'm American. I'm also half Icelandic. I started in the SCA in Iceland, and I moved to Sweden, met him. We participated in the Principality tournament, and the Principality laws say that the courts must be conducted in Swedish. I did not speak Swedish so fluently at the time, so that was that was my goal for there, is to, now I'm really going to start speaking Swedish. So that's what I did.
So what Drachenwald known for, apart from being the largest kingdom in the known world?
From what I've heard, it's the authenticity of garb and armor and that stuff. When people travel to Australia or Pensick or to other large events, they go, he or she is from Drachenwald. You can tell by the garb.
And then castles.
Castles. We have events in period castles.
Nice. For me, that's an absolute dream. I haven't been to Europe, so it is that, oh my gosh, goal.
See, I was born in Scotland and I grew up in Ireland, and then my family immigrated to Australia. So people say to me, so you do European persona? And I'm like, no, because I don't think you appreciate it when you live there. It's only when you actually move away that you kind of go, I missed out on all of those things I could have been doing.
You don't miss what's in your backyard until you move.
Exactly. Exactly. So what is Drachenwald's premier events for heavy fighting, for the art of fencing and rapier, for arts and sciences, for socializing, and for the sheer enjoyment? Which events would you say are a must if we were going to travel to Drachenwald?
We're slightly biased, and we're going to say Double Wars first, which is in Nordmark, southern Sweden, a week event. There you have it all. It's a week or 10-day event, and you have everything there. Then there are several other events that are quite good as well for different types of focus. You want to bring them up?
I mean, we have fencing weekends. We do actually have one in the Shire where we live. It's one weekend with only fencing, basically. And there are other events in Insular Draconis, which are fencing focused. So there are focused events. If you want to have a catch it all, it's the week-long events.
And we have series of events for archery. We have I think it started with Flaming Arrow, and then we had Smoldering Arrow, Frozen Arrow, and they travel throughout the kingdom. So they would have one in Ireland, one in Finland, one in Sweden, and they are archery focused. And it is amazing to see all of those archers get together and have a wonderful time and wonderful competitions. For socializing while still getting the A&S and the fighting and such, I've heard that Cudgel is the one that you want to visit. I've not been there myself yet. We managed to miss it last year, and but it is really relaxed and good time to socialize with people while still getting in quality fighting, fencing, and archery, and lots of lovely teachers, really talented people there.
You mentioned earlier that you are known for castles. Do you have any events that are actually in castles?
Yes, there is the event in Insular Draconis that is called Raglan Fair.
In Wales.
Where you actually camp at the castle grounds, and you have I did a fencing 1 hour fencing thing in what's called the Fountain Court at Raglan Castle, where they did period fencing. They've actually done fencing there in period times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So standing on those ground and do the fencing was an amazing experience. Drachenwald's 20 years celebration was in a period castle as well, and we had a pot of arms on the castle grounds looking up at the castle
in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's something that is so unusual for particularly for me. Coming from Australia, our history is just over 200 years old, and we don't have that kind of infrastructure. So we do have some castles that have been built, but to be able to participate in the living history component of fighting in a castle, for me, it blows my mind just being able to think of doing that.
I would add that at Raglan, one of the most enjoyable fencing that I've done is on the bridge over the moat.
Wow. Are there edges on the bridge?
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes. And I was not there, but I have heard the story of one of our fencers who lost his sword over the railing into the moat, and he spent 2 days waiting in there trying to find his sword, but no, it's gone.
And it's not just that the bridge is about a meter above the moat, it's a couple of stories up.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And there is water in the moat.
Yes, it's an actual moat.
That would be fantastic. And I can't wait for somebody to find that sword in a couple of years' time and think that they found like some kind of medieval treasure. Only to be told that it's not. I'll be looking forward to hearing about that. That's going to be awesome.
Yes.
So we have been asking the crowns, when this is your first reign as king and queen, did you go in knowing that you were able to do this, and what was your initial reaction to winning? We've had some very interesting comments where some people were like, I didn't expect it. Other people are like, oh no, I went in knowing. And I was this is the day. And I was like, so we thought we'd ask, what mindset were you both in at that time?
I'll let you answer first.
This wasn't our first time competing in a crown tournament, and looking at the participants, I know we had a good chance of winning. So Swedes don't like to brag or so, but I can say that I was not overly surprised when we did win. So I knew I had the fighting capabilities to win that tournament, and sort of having the feeling of this is it, this is the tournament, and also telling myself that this is my tournament. The other people are stepping into my list.
Yeah,
that's it.
And from the consort side, I can say that it did not surprise me that we won, because he has had this ability to win the crown tournament for a while now. He himself needed to realize that, and I could see he was a king already. So I wasn't surprised. I was quite prepared to step into the role. I knew that also from winning the Principality tournament, that on the day of the fighting, my job is to take care of him and make sure that people are not bombarding him with questions, and anything, just take care of the little things, doing the dishes in the morning before the tournament, making sure I'm on time. That is one of his pet peeves, is being late. So that has been one of the things that I have worked on the most in our relationship, is to be on time, and especially for tournaments, to make sure that he is rested when we arrive. As we said, the kingdom covers 18 countries, so it can be fairly long journey to get to where we're going. So I take it very seriously as my job as consort, to make sure that we have a fairly good travel to get there, so it's not too taxing, and arrive at site not too late on Friday evening, so that he can be rested for the morning.
And also, I think we've been in the semifinals or the finals the last 4 or 5 times. Mm-hmm.
So we knew it was close.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you about the length of your reign, because we've had a couple of small discussions. When did you win the crown tourney?
Mid-October 2019.
Okay, and you stepped up?
January, 12th night January, the first weekend in January this year.
Wow. So far it's been a 10-month reign?
Yep.
Yes. And you don't have any heirs?
No. You're supposed to have heirs for 3 months. So our period is 6 months, and then you reign for 3 months, you hold your tournament, and then the remaining 3 months you have heirs to discuss and hand over things to, prepare them. And our crown tourney to select our heirs was scheduled for the first weekend in April in Austria. And that was not going to happen.
Yep.
No. Which made it quite, the mundane laws and regulations when traveling between countries is quite interesting, and it makes it a bit more challenging to be able to hold kingdom level events, and especially when actually together. So it happened that traveling to Austria at that time was not happening.
And so we went through plan A, of course, was crown tourney at the site that it was meant to be in April. We're now on plan E.
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E. We're now on E. Yes, I think.
And E is 18 months. Is that correct? That's how long you'll be sitting on the throne?
Yes.
Yes. E is that we will hold the crown tourney in next April, as was already the event was already approved and on the calendar. So we expect to hold our crown tournament in April in Ireland, and have those heirs step up at midsummer in June. And
how are you keeping sane?
It's a matter of being able to, okay, we need to do these stuff and get them done, and then be able to relax, and also realizing it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yes. We cannot do everything all the time. And so asking people for help, or saying that yes, we would like to participate in every online thing that's going on, but that's not going to happen.
No, that would really, we would burn out on that, unfortunately. I mean, we're very fortunate that there are so much going on online in our kingdom, and we're very grateful for that. But unfortunately, we're not able to participate in everything. So we try and measure out where it would be most beneficial for the kingdom to see us, and how much we would enjoy being there as well, which is pretty much every time we have one of these things, I feel energized and happy to continue. To be able
That's
to
awesome. What do you hold online courts?
We've had online courts, yes.
And I ask this because our crown held an online court yesterday, and they gave out their first lot of awards since the pandemic hit.
Wow.
Yeah, and they it's definitely very different to have that kind of court. How have you been with that?
The problem is for me, I want to see the reaction from the people. I want to sort of get the feeling of the room on how to speak, what to act, and what to do, which you can't during an online court. So it gets very scripted. Not necessarily bad that things are scripted, but it's a different style of doing things. It also you add another layer of it. You have the technical part that must run smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
You should not hardly be aware that there is a technical layer on top of the court. So there needs to be dry runs. You need to test everything and see, work on the glitches and see what needs to be done and what cannot be done. Mm-hmm. And good communication with the herald. That mm-hmm. is a key component. And also have a court technician.
A court technician, yes, very yes. Good. We discovered we held an online court, our first online court, mainly because we had already received the scrolls and everything that we were going to hand out, and we canceled the event with less than a week's notice. So we held an online court for that, to be able to give out these awards, and we did a dry run, which was very fortunate, because one of the technicalities was make sure that you have you're connected via cable directly to the internet and not relying on Wi-Fi. So, we found that out during the dry run. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And it was very practice with the switching, depending on who's on camera and who gets to say what, because when it's very spontaneous, it doesn't matter that somebody is murmuring in the background, but online the camera will put you in focus right away. it does put a little bit of more pressure. The royals who sit on the thrones tend to whisper to each other. Can't do that.
No, and you cannot whisper to your herald either. and card typing to communicate with the herald, that's not going to happen. So when the court starts, that you need to run it through, and you cannot change or alter or do stuff like that. You need to have, if there are uncertainties, you need to have, what happens if the person is not there, or they are being late, or what happens. So you have different paths. Okay, if this happens, we take this route. If that happens, we take that route. And you need to have everything planned ahead of time. There's no winging it.
I would add that the Prince and Princess of Draconis, we had a virtual Raglan this year. So we had to cancel the event, Raglan, the physical event, and it turned into an online event instead. And there were 3 full days, I believe, of classes and seminars, and we had court as well. And the lovely thing about that was that they had people sign up beforehand to say whether they would appreciate getting an award online or not, because not everybody is willing to play the online game of SCA, and we do not want to force anybody to do that. So because the awards are for the recipient, they should have a say in that. So we made sure that anyone who had said that they did not want an award, they were not forced to be on camera and receive that.
We did give out 2 writs during that online court, so that and the writs were given in such a way that they get to choose an event where we will be present during our reign.
And I am going to ask you to explain what a writ is. A writ is something that we don't have in Lockhart.
That was also, I was going to say, because some kingdoms use writs all the time. A writ in Drachenwald is not as common. So for an elevation to happen to one of the peerages, the most common thing is that on Friday evening, there's a court and a person gets blindsided and brought up to court saying, "You're going to vigil now." That is the most common thing that happens. We have, of course, many apprentices, proteges, and squires, etc., who they might have already discussed this with their mentor about, "I do not want to be surprised." And in such a case, a writ will be presented often. It can be in court, or it can be privately. And it basically is a promise letter saying, we would like to put you on vigil to consider elevation to this peerage.
So you hand out a scroll as the writ?
It depends. Since it's quite difficult to physically hand over a scroll while we're sitting here and there are several hours away, we had to sneakily make other people present the scrolls to them.
Oh, by the way,
we actually surprised 2 people. We've given out 4 writs in total at this point. We actually managed to surprise 2 people because they knew they were going to read the writs for the other person, but they didn't know they were going to get a writ themselves.
Nice.
So,
that is awesome.
and they were actually physically at the same location, because that was okay for mundane regulation and such
in that area.
That area.
That's very different to what we do across Lockhart. Majority of our askings for elevations are done privately. There are very few that are done publicly and done as the surprise element, but writs are not, the actual writ is not a part of that process over here. So it's lovely to hear that kind of thing does happen.
Surprise vigils are very, very common in Drachenwald, but it's the reigning royalty always try to figure out what the candidate's wishes are, because that is most important. If the candidate says, no, I don't want to know beforehand, then that is the route to go. If they say, I don't want to be surprised, then of course you try to accommodate for that.
So I'm going to ask you both how you got started in the SCA, like what's your origin story?
You want to start?
I'll start, okay. So I lived in Iceland. I was studying at university, and my university professor is a longtime Scadian. And she was doing her best to start up a local group in the northern part of Iceland, whereas the Shire in Iceland, Æiríkr, was primarily before then only on the US military base in the southern part of Iceland. And my university professor, lovely person, had swords in her office all the time. So anytime I would go and talk with her about my projects, I would see these swords on the floor in her office. And we would talk about things. And she said she needed a local person to help organize an event. I said, fine, absolutely, lovely. I'd love to help, as long as I don't have to join this nerdy group.
Yeah.
And look what happened. He held the first event, and I was immediately afterwards, my hand shot up in the air and I said, where can I sign up? It was wonderful. It was a lovely experience, and I have not regretted it.
And what was your first garb?
Oh, so yes, my first garb. Nobody told me this would be difficult, so I figured, oh, that looks pretty, and I made a Tudor gown. It was made out of polyester curtains, but it was a Tudor gown with the corset and everything. And I have actually worn that when we sat as Prince and Princess of Nordmark. So it was my first garb. It was heavy, ugly cotton and polyester curtains, no medievalness to it. But yeah, that was lots of fun. And people said they were really impressed. I couldn't figure out why. I thought it was a pretty gown. That's what I wanted.
I understand that. I was hoodwinked into believing that a high-waisted Italian was a basic piece of garb when I first joined the society. And it took me easily 3 years to get my head around making Norse, because there was no 8 meters of fabric in the skirt. It was just like, where does all the rest of the fabric go? And Your Majesty, how did you get started in the SCA?
I've been doing role playing and LARPing and that sort of stuff for some years. The first event I went to I was 16. I'd been doing LARP and role playing since I was 9, 10 something. And it was a friend of mine and my brothers that said, well, come to this medieval event. You already have the clothes from the LARPing and they'll do fine. We're just gonna hang out, socialize, lay on a blanket, eat cookies, and talk to people. That's about it. And who can refuse? It sounds like a lovely weekend. And I just got hooked and stayed.
And your brother?
And my brother also was at that event. I'm not sure it was his first. I think it was his first. Could have been that he's been to a few before. He's 6 years older and still plays in the SCA as well.
Wow. Both of them now are Masters of Defense. And His Majesty is the first Master of Defense in the whole of the SCA to become knighted.
I did notice
in that order.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
And I like saying that because he gets embarrassed.
the Swedish modesty. We do have two members of the chivalry that are also masters of defense over here, and one of them actually played over in Drachenwald, Wolfram Flamenherz. He played in Germany many years ago, and he has great stories and great memories, and regales us with tales of Drachenwald as a principality.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's amazing. But I had the honor of giving both of those knights their white scarves, and they are the only two knights that hold white scarves as well. So they're my knight dons.
Your knight dons.
They are my knight dons.
Also, the Drachenwald doesn't have the white scarf as tradition. We acknowledge it, and it's perfectly fine to wear a white scarf, and most fencers in Drachenwald know what a white scarf is, but there are no white scarves in Drachenwald as such.
We had a grant level award called the Dragon's Steel, which both His Majesty and his brother also have. And that was the highest level award for fencing in our kingdom.
It was instituted as a polling grant level order.
And that one was closed when the Order of Defense became a reality.
Yeah.
Wow.
And His Majesty is also one of the, we don't have the first Master of Defense in the kingdom, we have the first three.
Yep.
And he is one of them as well.
Wow.
Mm.
That is such an amazing honor. It really is. And I as Australians, we actually understand the modesty, because we really don't talk about ourselves very much in that respect either, and are very big on celebrating others and their achievements.
Actually, one of the premiers comes from Lockhart, Audenwald.
Master Audenwald.
Wow.
I don't know.
He's a member of the Laurel before he left Lockhart, I believe.
Yeah.
And he is, I think he says he's the member of the ancient guild of...
He's ancient guild masters of defense of Lockhart. He's one of the founding members of that.
Okay, wow.
And His Majesty, can I tell the story of how the age?
Sure.
His Majesty likes to point out to Master Audenwald that Master Audenwald has been fencing longer than before His Majesty was born. That always gets a laugh.
Yeah, but you can't tell, because Audenwald is very fit. He's very youthful in his way of being, and both mentally and physically. So
hey, he's about my age.
Yeah.
Youngster.
Wow.
So what has the best part of being king and queen been so far for you both?
The best part, being able to support the kingdom during this time, and try to do the best that we can. I mean, there's no precedence for this, so in a way, that making sure that no one else has to deal with figuring things out on how to do it, and being able to help the different parts.
Being able to serve the kingdom in this manner is very rewarding in itself. It seems like there's not much that we're doing. We do quite a bit of SCA admin behind the scenes, and that is one of the things that you realize once you step up. There is a lot of stuff that goes on in the background that people in the front do not see. And that is our job. That is to make it look smooth and make it look fun, and for them to have fun without being burdened of all this other things that go on.
What would be your most joyous moment as either coronet or crown?
Ooh, most joyous moment.
I can go first then.
Yeah, go first.
So we stepped up in January, and we had planned for our 6 months, we had planned to go to 12 events during this time, which was rather ambitious. And so we managed, I think, 4 events at the beginning of the reign. And one of the last events that I went to was in Polderslot in the Netherlands. The event was called Young Love. It was on Valentine's. It was organized by 4 young ladies who are 2nd generation Scadians. And they insisted on organizing this whole event without the interference of their parents. And so it was my absolute privilege and joy to go down there. And I presented them, on our behalf, I presented them with an award in our kingdom, which is, I wouldn't say it's rare, but there are not that many that have this. We call it the Dragon's Tear for a very well organized event. And this award was, we combined it with AOAs for the ladies that did not have it. And it was one piece of parchment divided into 4 parts for the 4 ladies. And it was wonderful to be able to give that to them. And,
very period as well.
Yeah.
And Your Majesty?
I'm trying to figure out a single moment, because there are so many moments and there are so much fun. When we said that there's a lot of admin stuff that happens in the background, it's well worth it to be able to create those magical moments for people and make it fun and make it the dream come true, so to speak. So I have difficulty to figure out just one. There are so many, because then I would say that moment is better than the rest, and it's all there's
Oh, I know which one you want to say.
Which one?
20-year celebration, our herald.
Yeah, we again,
Master
Drachenwald. He had been living in Drachenwald in Nordmark for several years, married, have kids and such. But he hadn't received a principality level award. And there is an award for martial arts, fencing, fighting, and archery, principality level. We were reigning Prince and Princess of Nordmark, and Drachenwald was our herald. So we tricked him, and that we're going to call up his wife, who is a scribal Laurel. We were just going to, tease her and banter and have some fun. So he knew she was going to be called up. She, on the other hand, knew that he was going to get the award. So he was calling up the person with the scroll for his own award. And the look on his face when he realized he got his first Nordmark award was extraordinary, seeing him being moved and touched by that. And those are the magical moments for us as well, to see people being moved and being touched like that. So on the other hand, we tricked her as well, because she knew she was going to be called up. So she got a service award, which she didn't know about.
At the same time.
That's lovely.
And the fun story about that was I calligraphied that scroll for her, and I was quite nervous. I'm not a scribe. I'm dabbling in it and doing some of it. And that was the second time ever I calligraphied a scroll for a scribal Laurel.
I can understand why there is a level of nervousness there.
But it was one it was one of the really nice moments.
Yeah, I totally understand what that feeling is like. I may have had a run of making at least one person cry in each of my courts. Just by the giving of the award, it was the emotional outlet of that. Have you had that happen?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yes. And I always have tissues of my own, just in case, which does happen that I need them. I would add that it was especially joyful and appreciated by members of the populace who have received the highest level of award for something, for them to be recommended and receive awards for principality level or barony level or kingdom level awards, AOA level awards, makes them still feel appreciated. And that is also a very joyous thing to be able to show them that they are in fact appreciated.
I mean, we've seen a pelican who had been a pelican for 10 years or so receive a principality level service award, and that person started crying because they felt, you know, everybody knew who he was, but, you know, sort of forgotten. But then he got the award and said, people still appreciate what I do. So
yep.
Just because someone received a high level award doesn't mean they won't appreciate any award or recognition. It's just,
I think that definitely happens across all kingdoms, where it's almost like a perceived concept that once you've reached a certain level of service or arts and sciences, or even renown on the fighting fields, that you've gotten there. So that's it. Like, but I do certainly agree that just acknowledging that they're still doing it is an amazing thing for anybody who has been recognized at a kingdom level. So yes, definitely something I think that most kingdoms could look into to ensure that they keep an eye on those who are still working. So
I have to say that one of the things that we were able to do was recognize a member of the Laurel with a kingdom level grant award that had been created by them because their Laurel area had changed. So, well, their area of research had changed. They were laureled for choral induction. However, the amount of work that they had done in Spanish costuming was phenomenal. So just being able to acknowledge that as well, because you're laureled in one thing and that area of research doesn't mean that you're stopping at that point. You are constantly learning and learning new things.
That is wonderful.
And I also appreciate when people who are peers who are being humble and realizing there are other people who know more than I do in all kinds of areas. And it's no shame to asking anybody who knows more than you, regardless of your rank. That is, just because you become a lord doesn't mean you know everything about all the arts and sciences.
Yes.
So
keep asking for the Borg gene, which is a completely mundane reference, but you know, the whole you get logged in and everybody knows everything else. So, I still haven't found mine. I'm hoping one day I will be able to talk about metaling, you know, tempering steel. That would be fantastic.
I actually would like to ask you about your personas in the SCA. So, Your Majesty, you mentioned that your first piece of garb was a Tudor dress. Who are you within the SCA?
So I did some research early on in my in the SCA, in my time in the SCA, and I liked the Tudor gown, and I liked Spanish. So I had come up with a persona that comes from the border between France and Spain. I had even found the town, which of course I don't remember anymore. I don't play Persona very, very heavily. For me, it has been about finding awesome costumes that I like to wear. I have been, I don't know if I want to say fortunate, but I'm very grateful that His Majesty likes to dress to match. So it's fun. We have sat on the throne where he was wearing Viking and I was wearing Tudor. And we did that on purpose because one of the things that Drachenwald is known for is authenticity, and new people may become slightly scared that, oh my gosh, I need to be able to produce something at that level. And we want to show that no matter where you are, you can, as long as you have an attempt to medieval garb, you are welcome. And so, yeah, I sort of have a persona, but mostly I'm here for the different types of garb.
I understand that one really well. And yeah, you do a lot of Viking stuff, Your Majesty?
Yeah, my persona, I started out as Viking, but there's too much fun in the SCA. Why limit yourself to one specific time period? If I had, I wouldn't be able to fence if I were going to go strictly Viking. And that would have been sad. So I do mostly Viking, and to be honest, that was my level of sewing skills, and it made it quite easy, since making your own garb, and this is I can make this, I can do that. I could not make Renaissance garb on my own. That is not my thing. So yeah, I'm mostly into Viking, and that is where the name comes from, or in Old Norse.
Yeah.
So and part of it is where we live. If we go just outside the house, we can look at old burial mounds from very early periods, and there are a lot of findings around here. So
a couple of rune stones, yeah.
Yeah, we have a rune stone just about 15 minutes walk from here, which is one of the reasons why I got interested in history, because it's it was in the backyard, but it was fascinating as well, seeing that okay, this stone is about this old, and people made it that far back, and
I maybe have a little bit of a fangirl moment there. Sorry.
This is a question slightly off topic, but being from Iceland and from Sweden, do you find it unbelievably surreal that the majority, there's such a big like Viking Norse culture in the SCA from people who are not from your homelands? Like, no. Do you kind of go, wow, like they would never have thought this, that it would spread out across the world? Because it's almost like another invasion.
No, I think also I do have a set of Viking, and for me that is the garb that is the easiest to make and the easiest to wear. And then once you have it's fairly comfortable. I discovered a new word after that first event, wearing my Tudor garb for the whole day. When you take off a corset, there's something that happens that I described it as a bodygasm.
Yep.
You can breathe. So pretty much most of the garb is uncomfortable in some way. Viking is the most comfortable, and I think that must have a large impact on why one would choose that. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I have to agree. It's one of the reasons that I do wear Viking, and being able to wear it in a kitchen. Yeah, is awesome.
Yeah. we are currently wearing our hoopelans, which is I don't know how many meters of wool. It's a lot. It's fairly warm right now. Late summer here. I know you're moving into spring, I believe.
Yeah, we are in spring now.
I tend to, sorry?
Sorry, Lilya and I live in very different parts of the country.
Oh.
So where I am, it's much cooler than, and it would be around the same, I think the same temperate as where you live without the snow. Whereas Lilya lives in a much warmer climate.
I live up near the Great Barrier. Well, I'm near the Great Barrier Reef, so it's the subtropics. So you get unbelievably hot summers. And we tend to not fight as much during the like a certain period of time because, you know, 30 kilos of armor in the heat here is just an accident waiting to happen. So we do fun games days and picnics and evening picnics instead, so that you still are participating. It's just not in the heat of the day. So yeah,
it doesn't get quite that warm here.
No.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit about what your background knowledge of Lockhart is. Did you know where Lockhart was before we asked you to participate in these interviews?
Yes. Lockhart and Drachenwald are the oddballs out, I think. So we feel a sense of brotherhood, kinship with Lockhart in that sense.
I think we feel the same as well. Absolutely, with Drachenwald. And we know that you have met some of the members of the Lockhart populace before. What was your impression of them?
Easygoing, fun, good sense of humor, and also that if you ask them to do something, you can depend on that they do it.
Always helpful.
Always helpful.
Lovely people to be around, always. One of the, I'd say, yes, it must be the first people that I met from Lockhart was when I was living in Iceland, and I was a seneschal of Æiríkr in Iceland. And we had the viceroy and vicereine of Insula Draconis come over. So this was the level of the principality before it became a principality. So the monarchs there were viceroy and vicereine. And these people, these lovely people who came up there were Duke Æiríkr of Bangor and Duchess Nerissa. And they are lovely people, and got to spend a lovely event in Iceland with them. We had some newbies there who are like, oh, what's that? Can I? And they're picking up the crowds. I go, no. But they were so lovely. It was like, yes, go ahead, try it on.
They're from our local group, and they are amazing people, both of them. I have a very funny story where I brought my brother, who I'm quite short and my brother is quite tall, to an event where Æiríkr was wearing a hoopaland made of exquisite fabric, and my brother had a couple of cups under his belt, let's put it that way, and persisted on touching the fabric on the garb that Æiríkr was wearing. And Æiríkr was very polite and said, "Can I help you?" And he went, "You are very touchy-feely, dude." It's like, you are never coming to an event with me again. Out. But Æiríkr just smiled and went, is he one of yours? And I was like, yes. So
he also participated in testing me. I was a marshal in training at the time, so for fencing, and so we didn't have any heavy fighters in Iceland during the time that I was there, but we started up with archery and fencing mostly. As I said, my university professor had lots of swords in her office, and so she was testing me as a marshal in training, and Æiríkr had borrowed some of her fencing garb, and he's the viceroy, and this is the first crown, top person that I meet in the SCA, and I was supposed to inspect his armor and see if and let him on the field. I had no problem saying, no, you're not getting on my list field. He was not wearing a gorget at all. Yes, I could see skin everywhere. And they did that on purpose. And I was like, no, you're not fencing. I said, okay, you can tell him that he's not fencing. You're good. I was not scared of him.
King Æiríkr, do you have a favorite SCA story that you would like to tell?
Oh, I have many stories. Some which should not be recorded or remembered by other people. As I've said, I started when I was 16, so that was 24 years ago. So there are some stories. I'm trying to just get one of them. Usually they just pop up and I tell them to her demise. Just one favorite. Well, one of them was actually the first one that comes to mind was the day when I was knighted. My knight was in on it. It was a surprise elevation. And I love the fact that the king and queen at the time, William and Isabella, tricked my knight as well and gave him an award. He knew, my knight, Gilliam, knew that he was going to be called up at court because I was going to be put on vigil. What he didn't know was that he was going to get a arts and science award. So the look on Gilliam's face was just utter surprise. It just, this is not according to the script. We did not agree upon this. It's just, what are you doing? So that is the first one that pops up. But I do have lots and lots of stories.
So you want one that's not quite, it's borderline should be recorded, but this is the event that I met my beloved husband. This is before I spoke Swedish. So we spoke English at the event. He's starting to squirm. He and his brother are sitting there where he has a class in I think he was doing Viking silver work, jewelry. Yeah. And I was sitting there with some of the friends from the Shire where I lived in Sweden, which was not the same place. And he and his brother say, well, we can teach you all the Swedish you need to know. And they say, well, the most important thing to know at an event is to say, I need a beer at an SCA event. So they teach me, jag behöver smisk. And I look at him, and even though I didn't know him, I could see that twinkle in his eye. And I was like, I don't know if I should trust this. And then later I found out it means I need a spanking. The best part about this is it's not the first time that the brothers have used this ploy on unsuspecting people learning Swedish. You want to tell that one?
We taught a friend of ours. First off, we need to figure out if the person has a good sense of humor and can take that kind of joke. We did teach a person this phrase, and he went, okay, and repeated it, and he knew a bit of German, so it went fairly well with the pronunciation. And off he went and said this to another person at the event, saying the phrase in Swedish, and the person he was talking to is Swedish, got so confused, didn't know what to do, and said, do you want a beer? And we had to come up and say, it doesn't really mean what you think it means. And he just went, I got a beer, I'm happy.
It sounds like something that Australians would do to other people. So yeah.
So, but we are very careful, making sure that the person we tease have that kind of humor, so we don't do it to
just anybody.
No.
Thank you so much, Your Majesties. Unfortunately, our time is up tonight, and we have had such an amazing time having our conversation with you both. Please join us next time, people who are watching. Next weekend, we do have a couple of standout, well, not standout, but surprise ones for us, which is the Crown of Ontia and the Crown of Avakal coming to join us. Please like, share, and subscribe our page of the Crown Between Two Roses. And again, thank you, Your Majesties. It has been an honour to get to know you just that little bit more, and the sharing of knowledge and seeing how much Drachenwald and Lockhart are very similar in a lot of ways.
If there is anything
it's been a pleasure
within the next 18 months, within the next like length of your like reign, since it's going for 18 months, please, I'm volunteering that I will set up some fun activity for your kingdom if you need me to.
Thank you, and you're very welcome to come visit us in Drachenwald whenever it is possible again.
Oh, I will be there. Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.